Good evening, Broncos fans, and welcome to Orange and Blue View. I've got Ron White here, my co-host. I'm Thomas Hall. We're going to dive into your favorite Denver Broncos. Obviously, we're going to talk a little bit about what they can do. I mean, they're 2-0 in their last two games. They got a little streak going. They beat the Chiefs. What are they going to be able to do after this bye to keep their momentum, or even during the bye? But before we do that, Ron, how are things going? Are you excited about this team going forward?
Yes, things are going well, Thomas. And hello, everyone out there. It's good to be with you guys again. And yes, as far as your Denver Broncos are concerned, I'm excited. This victory against the Chiefs has, changed things, kind of put things a little more into perspective, Thomas. And, I know, prior to the victory, we thought that the playoffs were a far cry. And
Yeah.
now, with this victory with the Chiefs, we could be having this conversation again, if things go the right way and if they keep, somewhat of a winning streak going, if they play up to their potential, we can see some things change. But I'm very encouraged from what I've seen from this team over the past few games.
Yeah. I mean, I've said this before. The Kansas City Chiefs game was a must win. They had to break the streak. I'm worried that was their kind of Super Bowl for the year, and they're going to fall back to where, closer to where they were before the Chiefs game. I really want to see what happens against the Bills before I really jump on the bandwagon again. Cause I was pretty excited about this year. I thought they were going to come out and do some good, but they kind of fell flat coming out of the gate. But now things have changed, definitely. And they think things have changed too, right? They think the Broncos think things have changed. They didn't do anything at the trade deadline. They seem pretty excited going forward. So, yeah, I mean, we can get into this, talk about a little bit about how they can keep this momentum going. I think we should grab a couple chats first before we jump in.
Yes, most definitely. Got Dylan Von Arts here. Thank you, Dylan, one of the staffers there at MHH. He says, Sup, Broncos country. Make sure you hit that like button on the way in, share on all platforms, and subscribe if you haven't already. Yes, please do those three things, guys. Thank you, Dylan. And we got Kevin Gray coming in here. Good evening, Thomas, Ron, and Scott. Well, yeah, we don't have Scott, but thank you, Kevin. Good evening to you as well, and hopefully you're having a great Saturday. Let's see who else we got here. Let's see. Okay. So we got Dylan coming in here. Yep, fighting for some quarterbacks here. Michael Penix Jr. Alrighty. And then we got the Papa Bear, David McIlrath, coming in with a $5 super chat. Thank you, my man. We appreciate you. He says, good evening, Broncos country. Tom, Ron, Dylan, and Deacon Scott. Hashtag 11 and 6. Hashtag Buckle times 3. Hashtag MHH for life. Hashtag Denver Broncos for life. Again, thank you, David, for coming in. And this 11 and 6 prediction. Okay, that's that's very optimistic.
It means they only lose one more game the rest of the year, which is going to be a tough one to do for sure. When after they started to play pretty well, Ron, against the Chiefs, I kind of changed my perspective. I looked at the schedule again, and there's 5 teams they could beat on the schedule, really. I mean, if they play like they played against the Chiefs, all of them, they're in all of those games. But realistically, there's 5 that you think that, okay, they could probably win those. I don't think it's enough to get them into the playoffs. 5 wins is 8-9. I think it's going to take at least 9 and 8 to get into the playoffs. But as we're going to talk about it, how do they kind of continue from the Chiefs game and make this bye week kind of catapult them in to contention, so to speak, in the latter half of the season? For me, the number one thing is staying healthy. Mm-hmm. I think they have to stay healthy. I think they're starting to get some of their key players back. I mean, Baron Browning coming back was huge. I think that really made a difference over the last couple of games, even though the first game he didn't play a ton, but he was all over the field against the Chiefs. And also hopefully getting a couple players back. Brandon Johnson's on IR. He'll come back pretty soon. Dulcich will come back pretty soon as well. Hopefully he can stay healthy. But I think to me, Rod, to keep this momentum going, they have to remain relatively healthy down the stretch. They lose a couple of key players, and I think the momentum it doesn't matter what momentum they have, that's going to kill it.
No, that's a good point. And I'll bounce something off of that once I grab Phil McLaughlin here. Thank you, Phil, for coming in. We appreciate you, my man. He says, "Good evening, Thomas and Ron. When we beat the Bills, I will believe." Hashtag Buckham. Hashtag Go Broncos. Yes, Phil. Yeah. So again, the Kansas City victory. Of course, Kansas City was the first test. We had to, end that god awful losing streak. So we're able to do that. But yeah, we're kind of now getting into the meat of the schedule. The Bills is obviously a tough opponent, and you're right. If they go out and beat the Bills, if they handle business like they did with the Chiefs against the Bills, now we can maybe start to, see where this team is headed. And you're right, Thomas, and what you were saying earlier in regards to staying healthy. I mean, getting some of those key pieces back was crucial, was critical. And I want to get to one of my keys for the momentum, which is somewhat related to that, and the defense. The defense must continue to play well. So over the past 4 games, it has allowed 4 touchdowns, held its opponents to I think 19 points roughly per game, I think on average. And if they continue to turn and force turnovers, right? Again, holding Mahomes and the Chiefs, that high-powered offense, to 28 points total over the past 2 matchups, that's a good start. I know we've, given Vance Joseph some harsh criticism to open the season, and deservingly so. But, we have to credit him over these past several games of kind of what he was doing, using what works well with these players, kind of getting them in position to win. And as you mentioned, getting Baron Browning back, having PJ Locke there as well, and, sitting Mathis for Moreau, right? Some of those key decisions has helped this defense tremendously. So if you can kind of get this defense, moving up, trajecting up, I think that'll also play a factor into keeping this momentum going.
Yeah. I like what you're saying about turnovers. And Phil, thank you for the Facebook stars. Appreciate the support. Of course, as always, we really do appreciate it. But from my perspective, that the turnover battle, they weren't creating a lot of takeaways. Most of their takeaways came in that one game against the Chiefs. So you're right. They need to continue to take away the ball the way they did. If they can do that most games, you're going to win, So they really need to do that. And that was the one knock I had on Vance Joseph. I didn't think his defense created enough turnovers. So, hopefully they can sustain that.
Yes. Definitely.
But I'll say this about going into Buffalo before we move on to the next thing. For me, they don't have to necessarily beat the Bills for me to kind of be on board with them. I think if they can go in there and they play really well and they don't just, pull a Miami or something like that, Bills are a pretty good team and it's going to be in Buffalo. So even if they do lose, but it's a respectable kind of loss, so to speak. I know it's a weird thing to say, but say that they don't just mess it up totally. They go out there and they compete really well. I'm still pretty much on board with them still winning these other games. Now, if they beat the Bills, then I'm on board with them running the table. I mean, that means that they're all of a sudden a pretty good team if they can go into Buffalo and beat them. It'll be interesting to see which team shows up. And I think that'll be the telltale sign for me is which team shows up, the team from earlier in the season or the one that beat the Chiefs.
Yep. That's a good point. And I'm going to grab scratching off 760 here. Thank you for coming in. He says they'll lose to Buffalo, but win the rest. And yeah, again, I think to Thomas's point here, if they go out in Buffalo and make it a competitive game, if they keep it close, if they play well, I think that's still good enough. And again, looking at the rest of the schedule for the Broncos, I mean, there are quite a few winnable games on this slate. The Vikings, still got the Chargers, another Raiders matchup. So, they can, again, I don't want to see them go back to those old Broncos. if we can see at least shades of what we saw against Kansas City in this Buffalo game, then that can kind of propel them, to at least be competitive and win a lot of those games down the stretch. But remains to be seen.
I'm going to tell you, for me, it's not just the defense that has changed. The running game has started to kind of get some traction. Still haven't seen a running back over the century mark, but I think Javonte is trending that way. In fact, he was pretty close in Kansas City until, they sold out to stop the run on those last two plays. He lost 7 yards, so he ended up with 85, but he was close to the century mark against Kansas City, a pretty stout defense. I think, if Javonte can continue to keep rolling and, he can get a couple 100-yard games, I think that's going to be massive for them. I think keeping that running game going, and because that's where this offense works best, if that running game has traction. So that's a big one for me.
Interesting point there, Thomas, because that was also one of my keys to sustain momentum is push the ground game. So interesting stat. So the Broncos, really without trying, they have the 12th best rushing attack in the league.
Yeah.
Yards per game, right? 4th best in the league with yards per carry, only behind Miami, Arizona, and the Jets. So, if they keep pushing it, we saw that with the Kansas City Chiefs, McLaughlin, and of course Pookie. So if they can keep, pushing that ground game, I think that'll also kind of help set them up for success. So I agree there.
Yeah. Michael Ronquillo's coming in saying good evening to both of us on Orange and Blue View. Go Broncos. Thanks, Michael, and thanks for the support with the Facebook stars. Really, really, as always, we appreciate it. I know you're watching the Arizona game, homecoming game. So if you can pop in and out here, that'd be great to ask us a few questions. Yeah. And we've got RD coming in with Super Chat. Thank you so much for coming in and for the support. RD says, if we end with 8 wins, what would you do at quarterback? If Russ doesn't restructure, we have to move on, ? He's playing okay, but not close to that contract. Draft a tier 2 QB or keep him and let the guarantees kick in. Well, I think people that don't like Russ are going to be disappointed that he's going to be the quarterback for the Denver Broncos for the next couple of years. I don't think they're going to get rid of him. I don't know if he'll restructure. The problem, it depends on how they restructure, but it's just going to move money farther down the line that will come due again when you do end up having to do something with Russell Wilson. I don't think he's going to finish his contract out here, but I think he's going to be the quarterback for the next couple of years. I hear people talking about getting a cheap quarterback so that they can build the team, blah, blah, blah. The problem is cheap quarterbacks are a dime a dozen. I mean, you can find cheap quarterbacks everywhere. You can't find a great quarterback who's cheap. It's really hard. If you can draft one high, sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. I mean, there's quarterbacks that have been drafted high that don't tend to work out. I don't think the Broncos are going to be in position to get one of the top 2 guys anymore. So they may grab one for, to sit and kind of learn and build, but that means Russell Wilson's going to be sticking around for a while. They could end with 8 wins, but see, the thing is, if you're ending with 8 wins, that means the team has gone from terrible to pretty good, because that means they win 5 more games down the stretch, go 5-4 to finish, when they went 3-5 to start out. That's an improvement. Doesn't seem huge, but yeah, I don't see them getting rid of Russell Wilson right now. I think he's playing like he played in Seattle. Mm-hmm. People seem to remember Russell Wilson as a much different quarterback when they talk about him in Denver, because in Seattle he took a ton of sacks. Yeah. He fumbled the ball. He fumbled the ball 14 times once in Seattle. He's lost 5, 50% in one season. So he does do that, right? But at the same time, he throws a lot of touchdowns. He doesn't throw a lot of interceptions. He can still move the chains with his feet if he has to sometimes, even at his age at 35. I mean, he's still looking like the same quarterback that he was in Seattle. People just want him to be Peyton Manning, and he's not.
Yep. Thank you, Artie, for coming in with your generosity. We appreciate you. And yeah, if the Broncos end with 8 wins, I mean, Russell Wilson's still your quarterback going into the 2024 NFL season. Just because you're not going to be in a position to, I guess, draft one of the top guys. And then, again, I don't see Russ taking a restructure. I'm with you, Thomas. They're going to move money, further on down the line. So yeah, we're stuck with Russ. I mean, with that contract, it's going to be hard to to move off of him, especially with that albatross of a contract. So I just don't see us moving off of him. And you're right. I mean, that was actually one of getting back to the keys for momentum. A consistent Russ is another key that I have. And you're right, Thomas. He's going back to how he played in Seattle. He's top 10 here in a lot of different categories. When it comes to passer rating, TD to interception ratio, he has a great completion percentage. We see it on the field. He's moving better, the escapability, making plays outside the pocket, running for first down. So, I mean, we're seeing the Russell Wilson of old. And I just think, with 8 wins, expect a draft pick to, kind of help him. Maybe someone on the offensive line, maybe a receiver, who knows, and maybe even the defensive line, depending on where Denver goes with that. But yeah, I think with an 8-win season, your team is in position to kind of pick in that mid-range. And so, yeah, I don't see a move from quarterback. I just don't.
Yeah, and about his contract, really. I mean, yeah, it's a sizable contract. He's not playing up to his contract, still playing good, but give it another year when they decide to write a big check for Trevor Lawrence and Tua. I mean, his salary isn't going to look as huge as the rest of them as the salary cap kind of expands. And you're right, though. I mean, that's a big contract, but Russ didn't. He wasn't demanding a new contract. As far as I know, they gave him a new contract. I mean, it's not like he came in and said, I want this much money now, and that's part of the trade. They traded for him and then decided to give him the money. So, it's hard to say, oh, you're not playing up to that contract when he didn't demand it. He was just given it. And so I can't fault him too much, but I do want him to play better. But I will say this, he is going to play better over the back half of this season than he did in the first half. So you're going to see an even better Russ. And the reason why I say that, I looked at Drew Brees in his first year with Sean Payton. I wrote an article about it. He had up and down games. He was still learning the offense, and Drew Brees fit exactly what Sean Payton likes to do. Russ really doesn't. And so Drew Brees, had a couple really rough games, a couple really good games, and then some, kind of in between. And that's what Russell Wilson's done as well. He's kind of learning the offense, and he's faced some pretty solid pass defenses. Kansas City, great pass defense. I mean, really, really solid. New York Jets. Some of these teams in the back half, they don't have that. They're going to play San Diego twice, and you can pass all over San Diego. So you're going to see a better Russ, I think. And so as the year goes on, if the Broncos win, Russ is playing better. I think by the end of the year, you'll have a different outlook on Russell Wilson than you will when at this point in time. That's my thoughts.
Yeah. And, to your point on to Artie's point here on the tier 2. Yeah, the Broncos probably going to draft a tier 2, someone in the mid-late rounds, quarterback to just develop, because they're going to need to do that. But yeah, I guess Russ is going to be that quarterback next year if, just again, depending on how the season shakes out, with the 8-win to your scenario, that's what's going to happen. I'm going
to grab Phil here, coming with Facebook stars. Thank you, Phil, for coming in the support. Of course, Phil says, I think our cornerbacks will have more work to do with the Bills. I agree. I feel we can stop the run. Arizona plays at 7 p.m. Oh, okay. So Arizona's not quite on yet. When I talked earlier that Mike was watching it, but yeah, thanks for the update on that. Yeah, you're right. I mean, the Bills are a solid team, and they've got good receivers. And you're right. I think the cornerbacks do have their work cut out. The whole secondary does, but it's playing better, right? I think changing McMillan for Bassey has been a boost. I think Moreau's playing way better than I actually ever thought he would. I thought he was camp fodder when they brought him in. I thought he was just a camp body, and that was it. He's really taken up kind of better play than than we saw from Mathis. I think PJ Locke coming back has been a help as well. So I think you're right. They will have their work cut out for them, but I think they're better secondary than we saw 4 weeks ago or 5 weeks ago.
Yes, I agree. Thank you, Phil, for coming in with this comment. And yeah, they're going to have their work cut out for them for sure. I mean, I know the Bills are reeling with a lot of injuries right now, but yeah, that offense is still potent, especially with Gabe Davis and the rookie tight end Kincaid, and of course Diggs. So they're going to have their hands full. But again, I'm encouraged with what I've seen from our secondary these past few weeks. You mentioned it, Thomas. McMillan, Locke. Of course, we already know what PS2 is, and the Moreau upgrade. These guys have been playing some very good football on defense. So I think, they'll be able to hold their own. If they just make those impact plays, come ready to fight, kind of what they did with Kansas City, it'll be competitive.
Yeah. I'm going to grab Keith's comment here. Keith Bregman's coming in from Facebook. He says, looking over passing charts, Russ has gotten more and more conservative in how far he's throwing the ball down the field, especially in the last 3 games. Concerned at that trend. I'm not really that concerned because against Kansas City, that game plan was really to do those short pass, hit the deep ones when necessary. They played Kansas City twice in the last 3 weeks. So, I mean, that first Kansas City game, no doubt, Russ had an awful game. That was a terrible game. But he executed the game plan, I think, exactly how they wanted to run it this last week. I think that hitting those short passes, hitting the pass behind the line, and then going he threw some pretty nice, deeper balls in that game when it was necessary. But the real game plan was hit the run, hit the short passing game, catch them when they can on those deeper passes. So I think that was the game plans against Kansas City both times, although his first Kansas City game was terrible. But, I don't know about Green Bay if he just had a rougher game. It's possible that he just had a rougher game. I don't know. I know that he's a good deep ball thrower. If you look at his passer rating, which obviously passer rating doesn't tell the whole story, but he's one of the tops in the leagues for hitting those deep passes. I mean, he's accurate. He's scored some touchdowns on those deep passes. So I think they need to get Marvin Mims more involved, and that will help those deep passes. But we'll see. We'll see, because Marvin Mims seems to have taken a less of a role, and that's also kind of, you've seen these deeper passes get a little less and less in the game because Mims isn't playing as much. So, I mean, I'm not super concerned yet, but if it continues, maybe you're going to have Russell Wilson's not going to have a huge game against Buffalo. It's a tougher defense, and I think it's going to be hard. But that's where I'm at. I don't know about you, Ron.
You actually brought up the point I was going to make. That the number one deep threat for me is really in the game, which is Mims. So that's kind of why I think that's part of the reason why you haven't seen a lot of those deep shots as we did earlier. But again, I'm not concerned. A lot of it is some of the defenses they've been playing. I think with Payton, with game planning. I know earlier on Payton kind of abandoned the run, and now you're seeing him kind of emphasize it more. So, I mean, a lot of that comes with the game planning, but, the deep shots are going to be there. Expect it, especially with the Chargers coming up on the schedule, the Vikings, these defenses are poor on passing defenses. So I'm expecting more deep shots to come, in the latter half.
Yeah. And the other thing too, that I want them to do a little more, and I saw it against Kansas City. They tried to, have Sutton come right off the line and just a quick pass to Sutton.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's more of a Jerry Jeudy type play, right? He's a little more Sutton off the line. You can get open quicker. I want them to have Sutton down the field a little bit farther and throw it up to him, right? I want him to go get those balls, and that's what he's been doing.
Mm-hmm.
So, get him a little bit deeper and throw it up to him. You'll start to see those bigger plays happening as well with something like that. And I think they'll probably start doing that a little bit more as the season goes along as well.
Yep. I want to grab that. I definitely agree. I want to grab Keith Brugman here, because this is a great question. And it may get into some draft talk and one of my draft wishes. Thank you, Keith, for coming in. He says, will Greg Dulcich be the Joker when he returns or just a joke? We need a legit receiving tight end. Yeah, when he's on the field, he's a great pass catcher. It's just, again, being on the field. That hamstring is just, it's crazy, man. It's just, he's been battling that for a while, and it's hard for him to stay healthy on the field. But his potential, his big playability is there. I don't necessarily call him a joke, but this is where we need consistency in the tight end room, and we haven't had that for a while. Which gets into, if we can get someone like a Brock Bowers, depending on where we pick, to kind of be that legit all around tight end, I think that would definitely pay some dividends for this team. But yeah, to answer your first question, if he can return, when he does return, I do expect him to play a role in his offense, and hopefully he'll definitely make some plays. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. But yeah.
Yeah, I like Dulcich, but if he's just not on the field, you can't rely on him. But I do think that's a key piece that's missing from this offense, is a tight end who can kind of stretch the field. I thought Adam Troutman would have a little bit better season than he is, but he's just not. He just doesn't have it. And they're not getting Adkins out there. Manhurts is a blocker, so there's a key element that's missing. So if Dulcich does come back and he can stay healthy and play, I think that's going to be a boon down the stretch. I think, he can play that Joker role, like you said, but at the same time, is he just going to get hurt again and be gone? That's where it's, that's where the problem lies, right? You can have great potential, but if you can't be on the field, it doesn't really matter. So,
yep.
Yeah, we got BK coming in saying drop by to say hi and dropped us some support. Thank you so much, BK, with the super chat. Watching some college football to check out the talent. Yeah, I mean, the reports are the Broncos brass is in watching Washington versus USC right now. Two quarterbacks that are going to be slinging it out there. At this rate, I mean, the way the Broncos playing, they probably have no shot at Caleb Williams. I mean, maybe if they were able to trade away, mortgage more of their draft picks to move up, they could. But what, Michael Penix Jr. or whatever, however you pronounce his name, he's available. He'll be around. He seems like a pretty solid player to me. I haven't done a lot of scouting, but yeah, it's good. It's fun to watch these college games for sure.
Yeah, thank you, BK, for coming in with the super chat. And yeah, I was watching some earlier today for some talent, especially on UGA. And then, I know the LSU and Alabama game is going on right now. So, yeah, just plenty of good teams playing with plenty of talent on the field. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there.
I'm going to grab William Contalano here coming in. He's voicing his concern with Russ taking sacks. He's my only complaint with Wilson this season is him taking sacks and holding it too long, which he has always done so. So it's something that comes with the territory with him. Yeah, exactly. That's what we were talking about earlier. He does take a lot of sacks. I wish he didn't. He just does. He holds the ball a little bit too long. He's not that quick, drop back, hit your back foot, go kind of thrower. He does hold it. I still think he's still got it in his legs to kind of, get out of the pocket. I really want to see the Broncos work a little bit more with moving pockets, right?
Yes.
Or get him out, get him moving already, because right now it looks like he drops back. As soon as the pressure starts to come, he starts looking to run. So why not move, why not get him out moving to begin with? Because that's where he does a lot of work. The other thing is when he does scramble, I don't see the receivers getting open either. So I think that has got to come as well. So when he does feel that pressure, he starts moving. I hope those receivers can find an open spot for him to toss it to him, because those are going to be some big plays, right? Those will be big plays when that happens. But you're right. I just have this feeling, that Russell Wilson's taken so many sacks that it's finally starting to wear on him. He's like, sack's coming. I better bail. Right. And, once taking averaging 40, he's averaging 40 some sacks for his career. I think it's like 43 per season for his career, something like that. I mean, it's a pretty heavy burden. So hopefully hopefully he can, get his, mental side of it right and hang in there just a little bit longer to get those throws in the pocket instead of bailing.
Yeah. Thank you, William, for coming in. And I agree. A lot of, quite a few of these sacks are on him just because he holds that ball way too long. As Thomas just alluded to, I would like to see more, moving pocket, him on the boot, just a little bit more. I feel as though at times Thomas as well, like he just locks in on that first read, and he's not anticipatory when it comes to some of these throws as well. So he just kind of gets timid and folds, and then he sees the pressure coming, and that's it. So just having, again, it goes back to the separation too. So making sure these receivers can get separated, and he can anticipate a lot of these throws. I think that'll kind of, diminish some of that so he can get the ball out quick.
Yep. Matthew Bowden's coming in asking, where's Riley Moss? We've asked the same question. We've been asking that question too. Where are all of the young guys? Really, not all of them, but Mims doesn't get as much playing time as we think he should. Drew Sanders doesn't look ready to me. Like, he looks ready for special teams. He can come in. He misses too many reads for me. But I think he'll build on that. He'll get better. Riley Moss just hasn't been seen. He just hasn't been seen. And JL Skinner has not even been active. So that tells me one thing. If they weren't playing their young guys already, the team felt like they were better than their record and that they were going to be able to drag their way out of it somehow. Because if they thought, okay, we just don't have the talent, we're not competing, they would have started playing these young guys more, even on special. And I said this draft was an eye towards special teams in that first year. All of those players up to Forsyth was, in my mind, a special teams type player. They could go. And so that's why I was kind of surprised that JL Skinner isn't active and playing on special teams. Riley Moss, I think, is out there, but you don't see his number called very much. So I don't know. I don't know where he is. It's a question we keep asking.
Yeah, that's the $1 million question, Matthew. We were pining for Riley Moss when Mathis had all those struggles earlier. I mean, you drafted him. Why don't you play him? That there were, good reviews. He had a good scout report. I wanted to see him. All of us wanted to see him on the field. But I guess it tells you that, the team just doesn't think he's ready, just with JL Skinner, ready to be there. But, hopefully, depending on how the season goes, obviously, if they are on this winning trajectory, you probably won't see them. But, if they go back to the old Broncos, later in the season, the last several games, play them. We just kind of want to see what they look like on the field. But that's a good question. We sorry, we don't have the answer for where Riley Moss is.
Yeah, I'm going to grab David Yunkin here because I think this is another key. Mm-hmm. And David says, my concern has always been the offensive line, regardless of all the money they spent on it. Absolutely. It has been a problem for a while, especially that right tackle. They went out and spent the money. Now, I think Garrett Bowles is playing pretty well. I think Ben Powers struggled at first, but he has been very, very good in the last few games. He's completely improved. Obviously, Lloyd Cushenberry, my surprise player for 2023, thank you, is playing great. He's like surprised everybody. He's playing so good. And Miners is one of the better guards in the league right now. Mm-hmm. He plays so aggressive. You could see that when I love it watching Javonte Williams getting out there and Miners helping him gain those extra yards, like plowing into people. This game against Kansas City, I remember early on, I think it was a cornerback or safety trying to make a tackle, was kind of hanging on him, and he just blasted him, knocked him. I think he knocked him about 5 yards back, and they exchanged some words and everything. But that's like Miners he has that mentality that I love. So from my perspective, the line needs to continue to play as well as they are, and hope that McGlinchey kind of makes progress. I mean, sometimes he plays okay, but he's kind of that weak link. So if he does start to turn towards playing better and not giving up the sacks and being more consistent in the running game, you're going to see a very solid offensive line for the rest of the season. Knock on wood, make sure that they stay healthy. But I'm liking what I'm seeing, especially from the interior offensive line. I think the interior offensive line is one of the, well, not the top unit, but it's one of the units that are, up there in the NFL as far as how well they're doing.
Yes, I agree 100%. Thank you, David, for coming in. And yeah, the interior looks good. It was a little struggle at the beginning, but like I said, Cushionberry looks good. Miners, Ben Powers has turned it around quite a bit, because I was concerned those first few games with Ben Powers, but he's turned it around. But I think the weakest link is right tackle. We see again, McGlinchey's okay with the run blocking, but he just needs to be more consistent in pass pro. Just allowing those sacks and those penalties on him. That's kind of been the weakest link. But again, I'm encouraged, David, from what I've seen, at least play wise. The money, yeah, I would say that overall they're not living up to money that we provided to them, but let's hope that they just continue to make the strides, especially on the right tackle side, that they need in order to justify the contracts. But it's a work in progress. Put it that way. It's a work in progress.
I also say this too. Remember, Garrett Bowles wasn't playing all the time in camp. They were resting him, coming back from the injury. So him and Ben Powers, it took a little while to get that chemistry. Same with McGlinchey. He was hurt. He missed a lot of time. And so maybe it's this chemistry that they've got to keep working together. Maybe you'll see McGlinchey look even better as the season goes on, because they stay consistent. They get that team effort going that the offensive line really needs. It's not, the offensive line has got to be working as a unit more so than any other position group from my perspective. So hopefully McGlinchey will start to look better as the season goes along. I hope so. I mean, that's a huge waste of money if he continues to play the way he has. So I don't know, but yeah, let's hope so. And we got Keith Brugman coming back in with Facebook stars. Thank you for the support, Keith. And he says, you can whisper only one piece of advice into Sean Payton's ear. What do you both say? That's a good question. Mine has been kind of where we were talking about these young guys, is give Mims more targets.
Yeah.
Get him out there and give him more targets. He is your most explosive player on that offense. I like McLaughlin. I like Judy. I think they're both explosive. Mims is the guy. Get him out there, because it'll do two things. One, you're going to get that kind of impact play, the explosive play that the offense really needs to win. Second thing, you're going to give him more reps, and you're going to find out just how good he is, right? You're going to find out how good Marvin Mims really is. Is he your guy for the future? Then at draft time, if you want to put one of those wide receivers on the block, you feel confident that Mims is the guy, right? But if you don't play him enough, if you don't let him go out there and earn his stripes on the field as a rookie, you may not know. And then you're going to be a little bit, when it comes time to whether or not you want to trade somebody, you're going to have doubt in your mind if Mims is the guy. So it kind of solves two things for me.
You took mine. Thank you, Keith, for coming up with this question. Yeah, I was on the whole big explosive plays tip in the Mims, but I'm going to say, don't abandon the run. Again, that's what you've been doing the first several games of the season, and you see what happens when you don't. Right, you had the game plan. Just keep sticking to the game plan. Of course, you'll have your passes. You'll have your receivers on the peel. You'll have those play calls designed, obviously. But you have explosion in McLaughlin. Of course, we have Pookie and Samaje Perine. So let's not abandon the run. There'll be times when you're going to have to rely on the run, and obviously with Wilson's legs. So yeah, definitely as we face some of these opponents, keep the ground game going and keep it consistent would be my advice to him as well.
Great question. That was fun.
Yeah, that was fun.
We got Phil coming in with Facebook stars. Thank you for the support, Phil, again. Just going to come back in about the O-line. Says O-line is doing much better on run blocking, which they are, absolutely. Mm-hmm. I think the interior O-line is doing pretty well on pass blocking as well. Not great, but pretty well. And then, but McGlinchey is nowhere near playing up to the value that we have in him. And that's true. You do need to play up to your contract. And that's why people are, they're down on Russell Wilson because his contract is huge. He's not playing up to it. McGlinchey, same thing. I think Powers is worth his contract. With Gregory too, he wasn't even on the field, so he wasn't playing up his contract, so he's gone. McGlinchey needs to step it up. There's no doubt about it. He just makes too many mistakes for the amount of money that he's making. But hopefully, like I said, that consistency of the O-line being together now now they've been together for 8 weeks into the season. They got a bye. Hopefully that consistency translates to better play at the back half of the season.
Yes, I agree. Thank you, Phil, for coming in. Yeah, I mean, again, we just hope that McGlinchey can perform better. We need this offensive line working in cohesion moving forward. So, hopefully we can get it together and they can start to look a little better. But again, the interior has looked good. It's just a matter of McGlinchey putting it together with the rest of the line to go through. So, yeah.
I do think they need to be more consistent pass blocking, though. Yes. I feel like they do let pressure in too quickly. Even though they don't, maybe they haven't given up a sack, but I think the interior line needs to be a little more stout on that interior pressure, get a little pressure too early. But other than that, I don't have too many complaints. Clayton Huron's coming in saying, hey, guys, smash that like button and share. That's great advice. Thank you, Clayton, for saying that. Appreciate it. 2 dubs in a row, then our bye. Love it. I'm telling you guys, we're going on a long win streak. We're gelling on both sides. And look, as Russ stats don't lie. Denver Broncos for life, baby. What a way to top off a Saturday night. Yeah, thank you for that. You can't argue with how they've been playing, right? They've actually improved significantly. The defense has improved significantly. The running game has gotten better. Special teams. That's another thing that we need to talk about. They were a major factor in that victory as well. Yeah. They're playing better. So it's hard and it's hard for me to be like jumping on this. They're going to go on a long street bandwagon. I'm sorry. It is just hard for me because of how bad they played early in the year, but you can't argue with how well they've been playing in most of these areas that were kind of deficient earlier in the year. So if they can continue that, they're definitely going to win some games. I'm still on the fence whether or not they've got enough juice to win enough to, push for a playoff spot. It's just they're so far behind right now that that's a really tough sell for me.
Yeah, thank you, Clayton, for that comment. You're very optimistic, and I love it. I love it. Yeah, I mean, it just shows you what this team can be if there's pristine execution in all phases: offense, defense, special teams. And again, the Chiefs. I think it was the Chiefs didn't even score in the second half. Correct? I don't think they did.
They didn't score a touchdown. Yeah, I know that.
I don't think they scored anything in the second half, to my knowledge. So, holding the Chiefs scoreless in the second half, that's awesome in itself. So again, it just shows you what this team can be, and if they can continue to play like that, they can go toe to toe with anybody. So I'm with you, Clayton, that this can be the game to kind of get them going. And, I'm going to bring up another comment here by Clayton, which I just alluded to as far as the whisper in Sean Payton's ear. Thank you. He says, our running game just getting started. Yes, I love it. Eat that clock out, baby. Let's go. And you're right on, Clayton. When you have a balanced offensive attack, with Russ finding those open receivers, getting the ball to Sutton, Judy, and then you have the ground game going. That we saw that with Kansas City. That plan was to just run right at them. And we saw that come to fruition. So if they can continue that just throughout the remaining slate, again, this team can go on that run that we expect. And I know the 3-5 record puts them in a little bit of a hole. And of course, getting in playoffs, there's a lot of tiebreakers, algorithms, winning percentages, and such that goes into that. But if they have everything in front of them, right? If it's not the worst schedule, they can go in and just execute like they did. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, and I'll just say one more thing, and a lot of people, it's taken me a while to convince some people of this. The Broncos dominated the Chiefs. That was a dominating performance, and there's a couple reasons why. Number one, the Chiefs had not allowed that many points scored by anybody all season.
Yep.
And number two, that's the fewest points and the largest margin of loss for the Kansas City Chiefs going all the way back to week 7 of 2021. So that was the Kansas City Chiefs are a good team. There's no denying. I don't think they're as good as last year, but they're a good team. And the Broncos whipped up on them. And so that's why I have optimism. If they barely beat them, I'd be like, okay, that's the Broncos Super Bowl. They went all out. They did everything that they possibly could to win this game, and then they're going to fall back. But they didn't. They went out and clobbered them. Yeah. And that's what gives me the most hope. And that's why I keep saying I want to see what they can do against the Bills. If they are respectable, then I'm back on the bandwagon, even if they lose. And I hate to say that. I don't want them to lose, but if they can continue that kind of performance going forward, and they're going to have rough games, don't get me wrong, but if they can continue that performance consistently, then I'm really on the bandwagon. And like you said, a lot of that has to do with keeping that running game going. Javonte Williams could be the star of this offense come the end of the year because he could start churning out some bigger games because he's continuing to improve and get better.
Yep.
Phil's coming in with another comment saying, it seems to me that the second half of the first game against the Chiefs is where this team finally started to believe in themselves, and winning the next two actually showed them that what winning feels like. Yeah, I mean, it's true. I know that some people don't buy this momentum thing or whatever, but confidence does matter. Learning how to win does matter. Beating the Chiefs after having nobody on that team had beaten the Chiefs before, right? Like with the Broncos, Justin Simmons had never beaten the Chiefs. So getting that monkey off your back, getting that confidence does matter. It's not necessarily a momentum thing. It's that now that they believe, which is huge, because before, when they were going up against a team, they probably didn't have the mentality that they believe they're going to win. So as they start to piece wins together like this against good teams or close games, they start to believe that they can win. And that makes a difference. You don't always win them all, but that does make a difference. And that's where I think this kind of could be a catalyst. Again, I'm being cautiously optimistic, but it could be a catalyst.
Yeah. Thank you, Phil, for coming in. It's, again, this game, I'm just to tell you how important this game is. When you believe and you get that monkey off your back and everything's going your way, how can you not believe? How can you not believe, guys? And this is a Kansas City team. They're the defending Super Bowl champions, for crying out loud. So to be able to beat them just in all phases, you're coming in being the aggressor. You're coming in dominating. The Broncos just came in from the jump, Thomas, and just dominated. They just took the game over completely. So if they have that mentality moving forward and have the mentality of, hey, I can beat these teams. If they go into Buffalo next week and say, hey, we just beat Kansas City, I can beat the Bills. Then again, who knows, that belief that they can go toe-to-toe with these high-powered teams, that can be that momentum, as we were discussing, to just catapult them forward.
Keith Brogman's coming with another one to pick our brains with, for sure. Another question says, magic wand. You can choose one player on the Broncos to be a Pro Bowler that has never been before. Who is your choice? For me, that's easy. I think Quinn Miners. I think he should be a Pro Bowler this year, the way he's been playing.
That's a good question, Keith. I may have to think about that one now.
Yeah. I would like it to be Lloyd Cushenberry, because you remember me picking him, Ron, as the dark horse candidate to surprise everybody. And I was saying it was going to be out of necessity. I'd like to choose him. But I think Quinn Miners is just playing better, and he's just he's going under the radar. You don't hear a lot about Quinn Miners. You hear a lot about Lloyd Cushenberry because of that huge jump he's made. but I still think Quinn Miners is playing as one of the better guards in the league. I think you're going to take, 2 or 4, however many Pro Bowl guards go, his name might be called. Really, it might. And depends on the back half of the season. If the Broncos can win, even if they don't get into the playoffs, if they can win, they get that attention on them a little bit more. I think you'll start to see more, more hype about Miners play. It's hard, as offensive linemen are hard. It's easy to look at stats and be like, oh, this guy was good. A lot of people don't understand offensive line play, so it's a little harder.
Yeah, I was thinking, Lloyd, that he was in the back of my mind for this question. I want to see it, kind of throughout the rest of the games. But I guess, if you have to pull my leg, I'll choose Lloyd for this one. But I'll think about that one some more, Keith. That's actually a very good question. It's a very good question.
Let's get this Patrick Wiltsey question. He says, "Aloha, gents. 9 or 8, or 8 and 9." And I want to say 9 and 8 because I think that gets them in the playoffs. They dug themselves too big of a hole. I think that they can go 8 and 9, miss the playoffs, but look much better. Losing those first 2 games at home is going to come back to bite them. Those were, one of them was in their conference, right? Against the Raiders, or in their division. And, if they would have split that, I would be on 9 and 8 bandwagon. I would say they're pushing for the playoffs. They've got to win 6 games, right? Really to turn this around and have 9 wins, 6 and 3, right? That's a tough one to go and do with their schedule. They've got a fairly tough schedule. There's 5 winnable games on there for sure. Mm-hmm. That means they got to beat somebody. They have to win all those games and then beat somebody that is probably a better team than them.
Yeah.
And maybe they sweep LA. Maybe they sweep the Chargers and that's it, right? I don't know if they're going to, but maybe they do. Maybe there's something like that happens and they walk into, Las Vegas to play the Raiders to either be 8 and 9 or 9 and 8. Who knows?
Yeah. Thank you, Patrick. I'm going to say 9 and 8. I think, again, looking at this schedule, they can win a lot of these games. Again, it all goes back to showing up how they did last week. If they show up how they did last week, 9 and 8 isn't out of the question. But yeah, the Chargers game, they can sweep the Chargers. They got Minnesota coming up, the Patriots. So again, there's quite a few games here where the Broncos can win, but I'm going to say 9 and 8, and they sneak in as that 7th seed in the AFC.
All right.
Bold prediction. We'll see. But yeah.
I hope you're right. I do hope they find a winning season because they need a winning season, and that's going to be a huge confidence builder going in, to the next season. If they have a losing season, it's more of the same kind of thing. I do hope they dug such a big hole. It's hard to dig your way out, but we've seen it. It happens. I mean, I remember the Detroit Lions. I think they won 7 in a row after they went 0-4 to start. And they end up getting into the playoffs, I think, that year. So it can be done, but it's rare. It's very, very hard because it's hard to go out and win every weekend, right? It's very hard. So I'm going to grab this one from Rico Hunter here real quick, saying people are down on Russell Wilson, but he's the only one on the team who knows what winning is, period. And I actually wrote about this a while back. I talked about it a lot. I said there were so many starters on this team that had never experienced winning. Their record for their career was losing seasons. Only a few of them had actually experienced winning seasons. When it came to the 22 starters on this team, it was really I think there was only 6 when I wrote about it. And then Gregory lost another game and he went to 500. So, 6 out of the 22, that's a lot of people that didn't know how to win. And Russell Wilson was one of the winningest players on the team, starters on the team. So you're right. It is true. And, the only problem is I don't know if that mentality translates through his leadership, right? He's a very positive person. And there's leaders that are like that. They're very positive and that's okay. But I think this team needed him to be a little bit more, more demanding, so to speak, like more demanding of perfection, more demanding of the winning ways. And it wasn't his thing. That's the only knock I have, really. And I'm not putting money on it, but I'm basing my ability to look at past history and kind of project what's going to happen. I think he's going to end up having a much better second half than he saw in the first half, which wasn't too bad.
Yeah, thank you, Rico, for coming in. And I echo everything. This is a great comment, and I echo everything Thomas said. But again, what do we know about winners? We know that winners are great leaders. They're more vocal. They're more demanding. Their expectations are high, and we just haven't seen the leadership qualities come out in the wash for Russell. So, it's one thing to bring your winning ways from Seattle, right? Your talents from Seattle, but how are you exhibiting the leadership? Like, how are you, engaging your players, your fellow teammates? How are you getting them prepared? And we just haven't seen that. So, that remains to be seen. Hopefully he can, but we just haven't seen that yet. But I'm with you. I mean, hopefully he can start to exhibit more of those qualities as we're wanting in a leader to get the rest of the team, in position to execute just like the head coach.
I don't know if he can. I don't know if it's in him, man. I just don't know if it's there for him right now. It would be nice if another player stepped up on the offense that was a little bit more demanding, and Russ could just be more positive like he is and just go be who he is, right? But
I don't know who that would be, Thomas.
I don't know.
Yeah, but who? It's.
I don't know. You're right. Who else can it be? Orange Bucky, was great to meet you at the meet and greet as well. Thank you for being there. And yeah, next year's going to be fun again. So thanks for coming in tonight. Appreciate it. All right, Ron, I think we're nearing the top of the hour here. Good conversation. To just kind of wrap it up, there's a few main keys. Defense got to play better, offensive line, the usual special teams. But I think we've talked about what can they do. And I hate to go out on a limb, but they can start winning again. Based on what I saw against the Chiefs, they can start a winning program again with the players that they have on this team. Mm-hmm. Whether they finish the season with a winning record, I don't know, because they dug their hole, but they can claw their way out. They can, if they can, if that Chiefs game was not an anomaly, right? If that was an aberration, if that's kind of who this team is, where they could actually come out and play consistently like that, they're not going to win them all, but if they can play like that, then they can claw their way out of this hole that they dug themselves in.
Yeah. Again, those are the keys to keeping that momentum going. If they just remain consistent, kind of how they played against the Chiefs, and execute. If the execution is pristine, as I mentioned earlier, this team can go a long way.
Definitely. All right. Well, let's wrap this show up. You can follow Ron at Ron White NFL on Twitter. So go follow him. You can talk with him during the week when we're not here. You can follow me at Thomas Hall NFL on Twitter. We will be back next Saturday. Probably not doing a pregame because the game is actually Monday night. So we'll see. So we'll probably think of a different topic. But don't forget that we'll be back next Saturday, and check out the other shows for sure. There's plenty of other shows. There's going to be a pregame. I don't know if if the Mile High Huddle podcast will be doing a pregame, but if you want to chat about it, if you want to chat about keys to victory or matchups or anything, like I said, hit us up on Twitter. We're there to talk. This is fun for us. So yeah, thank you so much, everyone. Really appreciate the discussion. Even though there's college football going on, it's hard to be here on Saturday. We thank you very much. We thank you for the support. So let's just say good luck to the Broncos the second half of the season.
Yes.
Let that Kansas City game continue for the next 9 games, and you'll see a much better team. Definitely. Thank you very much. Have a great evening.
Have a great one. Go Broncos.